Good evening. It's no secret the war has been going on in Ukraine for more than just the 2 years guns have been firing. For over a decade, tensions have been brewing, and some war analysts were predicting this was going to happen. But how did it all start? Most Canadians don't have a clue at all. Some think it was the Ukrainians' push to become a NATO ally, and others, well, they have their best guesses. With me today to discuss this ongoing conflict is Wyatt Sharpe, host of The Wyatt Sharpe Show, Anthony Feor, host of Outspoken, and Dmytro Bassmat, editor of the Kyiv Independent. Gentlemen, thanks so much for joining me. I appreciate it. Thank you. Okay, so first off, I just want to start, Anthony, I want to throw this one to you here. We've heard so many reasons as to why Russia invaded Ukraine. It's all a little bit up in the air. People can't exactly pinpoint. But what have you heard? Like, what's the motivation for Putin's invasion here?
So it's just from what I've been reading, it's to annex and take control of more territory that they believe to belong to them. I have my own probably crackpot theory, but I'm sure we'll get into that in a couple more segments. But that's if I can boil it down to a very simplistic explanation, that's what I would say.
And Wyatt, have you heard about the whole NATO reasoning? I feel like that's the heaviest thing people rely on here.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the amount of support that Ukraine's getting right now from other countries, that support would be probably 100 times greater if Ukraine was a member of NATO. I mean, you saw even just other countries like Finland, for example, recently joined NATO out of a fear that, Russia could do something similar to them, and they kind of wanted to have the backing of the largest military alliance in the world.
Okay, interesting. Dmytro, I want to throw it to the expert over here. Can you talk to me a little bit about the historical events where this may be folded into something that has been, people have said, it's been 20, 30 years in the making. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? What insinuated where we're at today or where we were at 2 years ago?
For sure. Well, I believe that this war is about control, frankly. I think Vladimir Putin, just like he does with his Kremlin cronies, he imprisons activists, politicians critical of his regime. He arbitrarily detains journalists. So this is about control. And, Ukrainians are no stranger to Russian oppression, and that's been going on for quite literally generations. And so, Putin, and he's said this himself, he wants to essentially reinvigorate the Russian Empire. He wants to take control of Ukraine. He is eventually, and I think we'll get into this in a few segments, but he eventually wants to go into Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, all the Baltic countries. And he wants to reinvigorate this Russian Empire. This is a generational trauma that Ukrainians have experienced, and it will only continue to unfold as the days go on here.
Right. No, thank you for that. I'm just curious, anybody jump in here? One of my questions was, did Ukraine's shift away when they became an independent state from any sort of Russian ties anger Putin to make this invasion? I find a lot of people don't talk about that as much, Wyatt.
I think a lot of things, something that people don't often talk about is Ukraine put in place this anti-Russia legislation, basically, which was basically saying, we don't like anything about you. It was basically saying, we want to get all Russian language and culture out of Ukraine. We want to get, we're not going to tolerate any form of aggression anymore. And so it's like people kind of underestimate that, but that was one thing that Russia probably took pretty hard.
Anthony, why do you think most people don't hear that? I mean, I'm not excusing anything here, but I'm just curious, that was something that I only found digging deep into it.
Because it's not part of the media narrative. And you would have to want, first of all, you have to want to know that. And the only thing that's really been broadcast to the public since the first bomb started dropping has been Russia is invading and attacking Ukraine. There's a full-fledged war. Let's get all the NATO countries together and support it as best as we can. A lot of that digging I started doing when you told me about this episode, and we kind of got a little gist of the segment. So why would that be broadcast? Yes, but it should be broadcast, but it hasn't been.
Okay, Dmytro, I'm just curious. We have about 30 seconds left here. Can you speak on this a little bit, and just from what you've heard, what you've written about?
Yeah, so honestly, these are pro-Kremlin talking points, and the reality is that Putin is the one that inserted himself into the Ukrainian fold. In 2012, under pro-Russian government of Viktor Yanukovych, he is the one that really pushed forward for pro-Russian language, more culture, and really the Ukrainians are getting rid of this because they don't want Russian influence. They're implementing decommunization. They're going away from Russia because they've been oppressed for many generations, and they are turning towards the West and their NATO allies for support.
Thanks, Dmytro. I appreciate it. We'll leave it right there. We'll be back.